Have you ever woken up and felt like your hand wasn't yours anymore? Just numb, couldn't move, had to shake it, had to rub it, had to wait before you could even hold your glass of water. That's how it started for my father. Not pain, not a stroke, just silence in his body every morning, as if his hand had been tied by an invisible string all through the night. Every morning I saw him there, sitting at the kitchen table before the sun even reached the curtain, his right hand hanging down, trembling just a little. He'd rub it, shake it gently. Took him 3 whole minutes just to stir his coffee. But that day, he didn't make coffee, first time in decades. I asked if he was okay. He smiled faintly and said, "Maybe my hand got pressed while I slept. Felt strange this morning, like it hadn't woken up with me." I couldn't laugh. Instead, I watched more closely and wondered, could just one sleeping habit quietly take away rest from the hand, the head, the heart? Could it be that every night he was pressing down on his own blood flow without knowing every morning it was the same, like a quiet old song playing on repeat? My father sat at the kitchen table, his right hand hanging down like a broken wing. He never complained, never cried out, just rubbed his wrist, then slowly turned his neck like trying to shake off a fog that hadn't left with sleep. And each time, he'd say gently, "Maybe I'm just getting old. Blood doesn't flow like it used to." He wasn't talking to me, he was talking to time. And I just listened with a heart that tightened a little more each day. Because that tiredness, it wasn't dramatic, but it came every single morning. There was one thing, though, he didn't seem to notice. It was always the same hand, the right one. And it wasn't just the numbness, there were dull headaches too. Some mornings he had to sit 10 extra minutes before he could even stand up. Still, he'd say, "I'm fine, just need some coffee." But deep down, I knew no coffee could undo the truth. His sleep was no longer rest, it was quiet compression. I began to observe more closely. He had a habit, sleeping on his side, and always placing that right hand under the pillow. It wasn't on purpose, just something he had done since he was young. But now, his body was over 70, and every hour spent pressing down on the nerves in his neck, his shoulder, his arm, was another hour that blood couldn't reach his hand. Not completely, not enough. It wasn't a sudden injury, it was a gentle, repeated starvation. The hand didn't die, but it began forgetting how to live. And not just the hand, that numbness slowly crawled up into his head. A dull ache, a sluggishness, like his thoughts had to walk through early morning fog. One morning, he looked up at me and asked, "Remind me, what day is it today?" I smiled back, but inside my chest tightened, and I couldn't help but wonder, could just one small sleeping habit, over time, wear down each nerve, each stream of blood, each memory night after night? I wanted to help. But where do you even start? I'm not a doctor. I didn't want to scare him either. But each morning, my worry kept growing quietly, like a shadow that never left. I started to pay more attention, not with words, but with quiet eyes, each night. My father always slept on his right side, always, and that right hand was always tucked neatly under the high, soft pillow. At first, I thought it was just comfort, a habit from years past, a familiar gesture from a younger time. But each morning, along with the stiffness in his hand, came furrowed brows, slow, searching glances, like he was trying to remember something that had already slipped away. I began reading, took notes, asked friends who were nurses, and slowly, a picture started to form. clear as morning light through a kitchen window. Placing your hand under the pillow doesn't just block blood flow. It compresses the nerves from the shoulder to the neck down the arm, especially in older bodies where the tissues aren't as soft or flexible anymore. One night, maybe nothing happens. 1 week, you start to feel it. A few months, and your nervous system is being quietly suffocated. But I didn't tell Dad, not yet. I knew how he'd respond. This way feels best for me. I'm old. Don't worry. So instead of telling him, I tried something small. That evening, I poured his tea, and as he started to doze off in front of the TV, I went into his room, folded a small face towel, just thick enough to lift the wrist. Not fancy, not a medical device, just a quiet support in the right spot at the right time. Then gently, I lifted his hand and placed it on the towel, outside the pillow. No pressure, no squeeze, just rest. The next morning, he didn't say a word, but when he picked up his coffee cup, he didn't rub his wrist, didn't shake his fingers, didn't hesitate. He just picked it up like it was nothing and took a sip. His face looked slightly surprised, but he didn't say anything. I kept going, night 2, night 3. Each evening, I placed the towel again. Some nights he pushed it aside in his sleep, but then his hand would find it again, like his body had begun to remember something safe. After 3 nights, he said softly, "My hand doesn't feel as strange as before." After 5 days, he added, "Don't know why, but my head feels lighter these days." After a week, he looked at me and said, "Maybe you're right. These little things, they do make a difference." I didn't say much, just smiled, not because I needed to be right, but because, for the first time in months, I saw my father drink his morning tea with both hands. No shaking, no rubbing, no waiting for the blood to return. Just peace. There's something most of us don't notice. When we fall asleep holding a pillow, we're not just holding cotton and fabric. We're holding on to the things we haven't yet let go of. My father was always the kind of man who gripped life tightly, held things in his hands, held on to responsibility, held on to worry. Even sleep couldn't loosen that grip. But everything started to shift with something as small as a folded towel. From that night on, I began building a new habit for him. Not just how he sleeps, but how he lets go. One tiny change at a time. The first change: a wrist pillow placed in the right spot. Not a pillow for the head, not something for the shoulder, just something simple for the wrist. I folded a soft towel into 3 layers, just thick enough so the wrist wouldn't press flat against the bed. Then I placed it parallel to his body, exactly where he always placed his hand out of habit. And when his wrist rested there, the fingers curled gently on their own. No force, no squeezing, no pressure. Just enough lift for blood to keep flowing, for the nerves to rest, for sleep to stay soft. And in that small space between towel and skin, something beautiful returned: circulation, stillness, safety. The second change: stop placing hands under the pillow. It sounds harmless, right? Feels cozy, feels familiar, but that position quietly compresses everything. The arm, the shoulder, even the neck. The pressure stretches down like a line, cutting off blood flow, pinching nerves and holding the body still in all the wrong ways. I started gently reminding Dad each night, "Just keep your hand next to your body, Dad. The pillow's already doing its job." At first, he'd forget. Old habits run deep, but after a week, something changed. I saw him adjust his own hand without needing to be reminded, like his body had finally learned that quiet lesson. And the third change, write a few words before sleeping so the hands can rest with the mind. Every night, I gave Dad a small slip of paper. No big instructions, just said if there's anything still on your mind, let's leave it here. One line is enough. He laughed the first time, shook his head, but a few nights later, he began to write, call and check the electric bill, remind her to pack the raincoat, light bulb in the backyard's going out, just little things, but for him they were weights, and when he wrote them down, his hand felt lighter, as if the mind had handed its burden over to the page. That night, he didn't grip his pillow like he was clinging to the world. He just let go, and sleep came easier. A gentle truth. Our hands are one of the last places blood reaches and the first to suffer when it doesn't. If you press your hand down all night, or if you fall asleep, still holding on to thoughts, the tiny blood vessels can't breathe. And you wake up with numbness, tingling, or pain not because of age, but because the connection between heart and hand was quietly cut off during the night. But there's another way. A folded towel, a few quiet words, a soft habit of release. And sometimes that's all it takes to bring peace back to both body and mind. There were early mornings when my father would sit at the kitchen table as if listening to something quiet deep inside his body. His right hand still numb, middle finger stiff, not quite able to stretch. Sometimes the coffee spoon would slip right out of his grasp, but he never complained. He just began the day like he always had, quietly. But recently, I've seen something different. He makes coffee with both hands now, left hand holding the cup, right hand stirring. No tremble, no delay. And one morning, as sunlight slid gently into the kitchen, he put the cup down, smiled a little, and said, "You know your mom has been holding on to her pillow for years. I think maybe it's time I let my hand go a little too." I didn't answer right away. I just looked at him, and in that moment, an image bloomed inside me. A hand, opening in the morning light, like an old flower learning how to bloom again. If tonight you've ever woken up with a numb, aching hand, if you've ever whispered to yourself, probably just old age, guess I just have to live with it, it's not too bad, then maybe it's time to try opening your hand. Don't hold your pillow tight like you're clinging to a worry. Don't tuck your hand beneath your head like you're protecting something fragile. Try this instead. Place your hand on a soft towel. Let your palm face up as if it's ready to receive a little light from a dream. And maybe write down just one line before you sleep. A task, a thought, a feeling you want to leave outside the night. Even just, "I've done enough for today," because sleep doesn't come when we hold tight. It comes when we let go. Sleep is not something to force, it's something to invite, and sometimes all it takes is a soft towel, an open palm, and the gentle belief that rest will return when we stop gripping so hard. Tonight, don't let your hand hold on to any worries. Open it, and let sleep hold you instead. And if tomorrow morning your hand no longer feels numb, come back here and tell me what changed. Sleep better after 70. Sometimes, healing begins with letting go of your hands.